Okay. Hi everybody, my name is Joey, and normally I'd be talking to you about Bitcoin on the other show that I do, the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast, but today I'm talking about footballs. And the reason I'm talking to you about footballs is because about 2 months ago I had to start playing quarterback for my beer league team. I've been playing receiver for a long time, never really thought about the size of the ball, texture of the ball, laces, any of that stuff, but when you have your own team to play quarterback for, you sort of need a ball that you go to every week, and you got to own the ball, probably, unless you're like borrowing from your buddies or whatever, in which case, power to you. But for me, I wanted to get my own, and it was hard for me to pick a ball, so I ended up on YouTube looking at all these different football options, like the GST, the VaporOne, a few others, probably balls that you've seen or are considering buying if you're watching this video. And one of the things I didn't like about all those videos is that I could never see them side by side. That was a problem for me. Number two is I didn't really get a good breakdown of what the break-in process looked like, felt like after, some of the pros and cons. And number three, I have small hands. So my hands are about 7 3/4 inches, pinky to thumb. And one of the problems I had early on with the balls was being able to get them in my hand and throw them. It's one thing, if you're like me and played receiver for a long time, you might throw a few passes every game, taking reverses, or you might play quarterback on the goal line or something, fine. But when you have to take the ball from the center who's, 8, 9 yards in front of you, getting your hands on the ball and being able to take the snap, get it in a position where you can throw and throw it without losing your grip, it's harder than you think, honestly. And that was one of the things I didn't really see in the reviews either. So I ended up buying a couple of balls. My loss will be your gain on that. And I'm going to go through the pros and cons of each one with you today. I got the three big ones, I think. If you're Canadian, these are the ones you can get in Canada without too much difficulty. I have the Wilson GST, okay? I have the Nike VaporOne. There goes the GST. I have the Nike VaporOne, and I have the Wilson F2000. This is the Uplay ball, the CIS ball. I also, for this video, brought in the Wilson Prep Kit, which everybody talks about online. This is worth it, and we'll talk more about that later. But first, let's go through the balls. So we'll start with the most popular of the lot, the GST. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? This is a good ball. The laces on the ball are elevated and pebbled, which is okay. I don't mind the feel of them, except that it seems to me that no matter what I do, one side always wants to hang off of the sort of underbelly of the lace. So for me, and maybe for you too, especially if you have small hands, I like to grab the ball on the last lace and then kind of push away from the middle of the ball to get a good grip on it. It's hard on one side like this. The other side's not so bad. It feels okay actually, but it's hard on one side like this. I think the other thing that I bought, when I bought the ball, I was expecting is, if you've played quarterback before, your sort of instinct when you're just throwing with your friends is to get a lot of your hands on the laces. I hope the camera can see all this. Get a lot of your hands on the laces and not much on the rest of the ball. And so your instinct is kind of to put your index finger on that leather sewn in strip, which you guys can see there, I hope. The GST has these sewn in strips above the sort of tips, let's say the tip quadrants of either side on the top of the ball. That's not how I would hold this ball. In reality, I think the better way to hold it, like I said, is to get your finger on the last lace, and instead of looking for the leather, just look for the tip and put your index finger on the tip and get a decent grip that way. This ball is like the favorite of everybody. When you go online, everyone talks about you got to buy the GST. This is the one that everyone likes. They're polishing it up. They got, the commentary about the leather striping. That's what they call this stuff. And honestly, it feels pretty good. It's sticky-ish, but not too sticky. But I'll tell you, for some reason, I just don't like this ball. It doesn't sit well in my hand. I don't know why. It could be because it's kind of thrown off by the way in which that leather is sewn in. It could be because of the laces, I'm not sure. It could just be me, but I would make the case to you, viewer, that I wasn't the only person having this problem, because even though this ball is widely regarded as a great ball, they released a second version of this with more stitching off of sort of the beaten path, right? So instead of just having these stripes and the laces and a couple of stitches here, right? If you had to throw off lace, let's say, they have stitching everywhere. It's all over the place. Now they say it's for like read options and stuff like that, where you might have to throw without getting your hands on the laces. These RPOs that everyone runs now. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. It just seems unlikely to me that they'd suddenly mass produce a second ball that's basically the same, except that there's added stitching. Maybe I wasn't the only one having that problem. So apart from that, I would say the leather on this is good, and I've done a lot to this ball. This was the first one I bought, and so I really put this one through the ringer in terms of breaking it in. I did the shaving cream to take the dye off. I did the brushing. I did the blow dryer. I did the wax bar, and it feels pretty good. You can almost hear, if I hold it to the mic, like it's not even brushed right now, and it's still like pretty sticky. It's not the leather that's the problem though. It's just for whatever reason the shape of the ball. Now we're going to get into the shape of the Wilson balls a bit later, but I would say if you aren't sure you're going to like this ball, don't let this be the first one you buy. Okay, and I'll tell you why right now. The Nike VaporOne has more or less the same feel. It's more or less the same size, except that if you ask me, this looks a little more narrow on the tips of the ball. And a lot of people talk about the laces on this ball not being up to snuff. I'll tell you that when I hold this ball the same way, I get a pretty good grip on the laces. These are not pebbled. They're just kind of striped and a little thicker maybe than the GST laces if I'm looking at them side by side. The thing about this ball is that it seems like they figured out that leather grip, stitching, striping, placement better than the GST. So if you look at the two, I think the GST is a little higher up on the laces and the Nike's a little higher down. I am looking at these, they're very close, but in terms of comfort for me as a guy with small hands, this is a lot better feel. Now this leather, I haven't put this one through shaving cream. I haven't done anything except brush this and wax it just to see if the leather would stick. It's pretty good. Like you can hear that. I haven't waxed this ball in 2 weeks probably. And this has not been through a game yet either. So it's really not even worn in. But this one I think is a little better feel. Now you can say what you want about the laces. Everyone talks about how these laces feel cheap and maybe like unfinished or they're not as high quality as the rest of the ball. I really disagree with that. I think these laces are easier to get your hands on, especially if you have small hands like me. It kind of just sits in there a little nicer. And like I said before, if you're really holding this ball, if it's coming to you from a snap, the first thing you're going to do is want to get your finger on the outside, sort of the tip of the ball. And it just is a little more natural because you have this guide here for your middle finger that the other ball doesn't have. I honestly think that maybe it's just the leather, maybe it's the way this stripe is sewn in. You can see the stitching's a lot bigger on this stripe than it is on the GST, right? Big difference in the way that feels in your hand. It could be a number of things. I'm not really sure on the makeup. You know, this leather, if I'm being honest, doesn't feel quite as premium. It's like 90% as premium as the GST leather, but it just feels better in your hand. It's stickier. And I don't find that the pebbling has, you know, is like under delivering. When I hope you can hear that in the mic, but when I like run my finger on that, you can really hear how sticky it is. And you just don't get that from the GST. I've used the GST in games, I should say, although I don't use it in games anymore because I ended up buying these other ones. This one has not been used in the game. Still feels like that. Everyone talks about how they're better after games. Maybe, maybe not. I've only played indoor. It's the winter here in Ontario. So this, in my opinion, is the first ball you should buy. Okay? That said, it is not the ball that I use. And we're going to talk about this whole Wilson sizing thing now because the ball that I like the most is this one. It's the Wilson F2000. This is this Canadian CIS ball, the college ball for us. I don't know about you, okay? But if I put these side by side, the GST and the F2000, does that F2000 not look smaller to you than the GST does? I think that it does. And I don't know if it's just a lot smaller or a little smaller, but I think it looks more narrow. And it sits perfectly in my hand. This doesn't have any of the tech that these other two balls have, okay? It doesn't have the sewn in stripe leather. It's just paint. It doesn't have like any fancy lacing. It has like the standard pebbled lacing that the Wilson balls all have. But I'll tell you, man, this one in your hand feels great. This is made of Horween leather. I don't know what the other two are made of, but Horween is great stuff. I'm a big boot guy, and Horween leather is very, very, very desirable in boots for its longevity, and its quality. And you really feel that with this ball. Now, the other thing I would note is that this one has, if you look, again, I can't see the camera. I hope you can kind of make out, there's like a dual tone here close to the stripe where the ball would be broken in. I don't know how much of a difference that makes. Again, I played with this one game so far. It is the best one I have, and it's the one I will continue to use, especially in indoor. This one feels great in my hand. It feels great to catch. I will say one thing for all three balls. Inflate them as much as you can. Don't go crazy, obviously, and pop the, the belly, the bladder for the air, but they feel a lot better and easier to hold when they're fully inflated. And this one, that laces I was talking about earlier, that grip, this is really the one I think you want. This is the most expensive of the three, but there's a reason for it, clearly. And I was kind of, it feels like to me, misled by people online who bought the GST over this one, because while the GST has some pros, if you got smaller hands or small-ish hands, or maybe you just don't want to worry about having to get your finger on the leather strap all the time, or the leather inlay all the time. You want to just be able to grab the ball and throw it. This might be the one for you, and I think this is one for me. Now, let's talk about the breaking in process, okay? So this one, like I said, the GST, I did shaving cream on this. I think the process was actually, if I go back and think, it was brushing it, which I used the horsehair brush for first. Not the best idea, okay? Horsehair brush is not coarse enough. We'll talk a bit about why later. These are brushes you use for shoes and stuff. You can get them in Shoppers Drug Mart here, probably CVS in the States or wherever, or some boot and like high quality shoe stores. It's good for leather, basically, real leather, not synthetic Air Force One leather. So I did the brushing, did the shaving cream, did a little bit of leather conditioner. Like I said, I have a lot of Red Wing boots and stuff like that, so I had some leather conditioner. And honestly, the ball looks great and feels okay. Doesn't feel bad, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't feel as good as the other two. The other two, I used just the Wilson brush kit. So this kit is about 30 bucks on Amazon, and it comes with two things. It comes with a brush, okay? So if you see me kind of poking those bristles compared to these ones, right? Like that's really, really soft. These are very coarse. This is almost like something you would see at a car wash, honestly, for rims. And it also comes with the tack brush. So the tack brush is just this like basic kind of bar of soap looking thing that you run against the ball. I'll show you how to use them both. But for these two balls, I didn't do anything except brush them and wax them. And, for the sake of the video, that burp's gonna stay in, I think. For the sake of the video, I'll do this now. There's really not much to this. You just kind of take the brush. I go about medium, pressure, nothing crazy. Try and just give the ball a little bit of a shine. And you will notice that the panels you brush will always be a little darker than the ones you don't. I don't know why that is. Maybe you're just taking off some of the leather and the leather now is like new underneath or whatever, but it's clear that this makes a difference in the grip, okay? So there's the side that's unbrushed, and then if I make the brush side, it's like you can't even move your thumb across there. So it does something. I don't know exactly what it does, but it does something. So you can go across like all the four quadrants with the brush and do the, kind of up and down, up and down. This one is easy to do because you can feel that the leather is the same on the paint as it is off, which is great, right? You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. With these other two balls, everyone online says not to brush the stripe. I can understand why. The stripe is definitely different material, although it should still really be resistant to whatever the brush is. The brush is not so coarse that it's going to damage the leather. It might damage the stitching, but it's not going to damage the leather. So when I broke in this other one, the GST, I did all this stuff and brushed the living snot out of it and did this for like a week before the first games of the season. And like I said, the ball felt really good. And to be honest with you, still feels pretty good, but it just never made it to the level of stickiness that the other two did. And so that's when I decided that I wanted to get the tack bar too. Now the tack bar is, it's damn near cheating, honestly. You can try like Stickum, you can try the Wilson Tack Spray, which is also okay, I have that as well. But the tack bar is really the best. Like, you just kind of, you can almost feel, because this one was waxed a little while ago. But when it comes to the tack bar, all you're gonna do, very simple, just 3 strokes, one down the side, one down the middle, one down the other side against the seam. you're just gonna brush, man. Just brush it in. Doesn't take much. You brush for like 20 or 30 seconds. I probably, you know, don't have to do it that long, but it doesn't seem to me that it all gets in there. If you don't do it that long, it kind of stays like a little bit of a film, not a film, but you can see it, let's say, on the ball. But when you brush this in, you know, I think you're kind of doing two things. I think you're removing a bit of the leather and like getting the wax in. But I also think one thing the brush does is heat the ball up. So what I plan on trying to do at some point to kind of like get this ball to a place where it's not a complete waste of money is get a heat gun when I do the wax. But like, I mean, come on, you could like pretty much hold that almost in my, you know, my smallish hands on the panel and not have the thing slip out. Listen to this. Like, that's a sticky ball. You like that. You can't use the tack bar on the stripes. So the VaporOne and the GST with the stripes, can't use tack bar on the stripes. You can use it on everything else, but not on that. They say to keep the brush and the tack bar off laces too, although I don't really understand why. The laces are probably the toughest part of the ball. But for, you know, my sake and everyone else's sake, I don't do it, and maybe you shouldn't either. I'm not 100% sure. But I think that's about all the stuff I wanted to cover in the video. You know, I hope this helps you because, like I said, there isn't a resource out there that has like all three balls kind of side by side comparison. Here's the things I like, things I don't, the size of the stitching on the two balls, the laces. And then I have not seen anyone talk about the F2000. The F2000 is the best ball. This is another Wilson ball. Like I said, this is the best one that no one has and no one wants to discuss. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to Litson's Sports in Dundas or Waterdown, depending on who you ask. It's on Oakfield Road. It's not far from where I live. They're a great supplier here in Southern Ontario. And if you're ever looking for this stuff, these are the guys you should go to. And in my opinion, you know, you should always try and support local vendors. These guys are very much a local vendor. They have everything you need when it comes to the ball, the tack, you know, everything. Actually, they may not have the tack bar and brush. Sorry, I got a cold here. But they did have the tack spray. They'll let you throw the balls around. They'll talk to you about what they like about each one. Again, inflate it as much as you can. Use the brush, use the tack spray. Don't bother with the shaving cream. Don't bother with leather conditioner. And yeah, man, happy quarterbacking. Hopefully your journey to finding a ball is a little smoother than mine. All right?